Yeah. Oh, good afternoon. And welcome to the 5,767th meeting of the Rotary Club of Chicago. I'm the councilor, the president, and I call this meeting to order. So welcome everyone. As I try to point out to people, you need to get going on your meal. Please feel free to eat while we're talking today. They'll be bringing your lunch after your salad course. So let's see. As everyone knows, I don't love the technology of the meetings, and we have all new equipment. So let's see if I can actually do how this works. Well, what do you know? I'm moving the slide. Okay, so as many of you know, we like to do a Chicago trivia as part of the tour guide. So I like to get out in the city. Perfect with Deborah, our Chicago representative here today, who's going to share all sorts of not maybe fun facts. So this might be a fun fact. So relating to this week, sorry, something negative, but so there's an organization in the city that we're all very proud of that began in 1966. And they are having one of their most popular events this coming weekend. They are also famous for their river tours. Does anybody know what organization that is? Oh, Eric. Okay, the Architectural Foundation changed their name to Chicago Architectural Center several years ago. But they are holding this weekend. I highly recommend Open House Chicago. Gives you an opportunity to go in so many spaces in the city, so many spaces that you don't always think to go in. People that are doing urban renewal, all sorts of different things besides just tourism and architecture. So I highly recommend Open House Chicago. Yep, Marshall. Fantastic. In the South and Northern Park neighborhood, that is a fantastic opportunity. Thank you, Marshall. I volunteer for it, and I just let them just throw me in anywhere they want. So I don't always look at the phone. So I do have a thought for today. It's not as a crisp outside as it has been, but I've been lucky to do a couple of road trips recently, and it makes me feel like the feels of autumn, which is really my favorite season. And I like to think about that this is a time when, remembering autumn leaves are nature's way of showing us that change can be beautiful. And also, it can be lovely to let go. So I've been lucky to do that the last couple of weeks. It's good to let go, but it's also really nice to come back and connect again with our fellow Rotarians. And I love seeing so many in the room today. I was going to get out of this. So just a reminder, we will continue to talk about how people can be involved in our meetings as a leader, the thoughts for the day. Get tired of my thoughts for the day, love to hear other people's thoughts for the day. Also, a reminder to register. Many people were able to register for this meeting, and we're really happy to see that. Numbers always are helpful to us for planning. We also have college scholarships coming up. There's a lot of things on the schedule. Please do pay attention to the gyrator, our newsletters that are coming out. There's so many good things that we're looking for input and support on. That college scholarship is for community service. We also have the service committee, and I don't know if there's anybody from the service committee that can address this better than I can, that we're kind of having a little competition with Philadelphia, which I used to live there, so it's still gonna love Chicago a little more. So, but it's just a little competition. So should be able to, we have alleys. That's where our litter is, so we can just go in the alley and pick it up. But Philadelphia, that was a big thing I learned when I moved to Philadelphia, and our garbage cans were out in the front of the building, and I was like, "What? You know the alleys here?" So they might have an advantage, I don't know. We do have a couple of meetings coming up where we'll be doing service projects. One of those will be October 28th. Please join us that day. It'll be a day for learning about the arts program, but doing a project that is supporting that. And that's October 28th. That will be back here. And some fellowship and maybe a little dress up for the season. Yeah, I might be alone in that, but that's okay. You can put on, I'll have my witch's hat and just a reminder, I will come back to that at the end that we do have next week is fellowship at Remington, and then the service project. And Eric's been doing a great job getting some additional speakers for us, so we have great things coming up. I'm going to come back to Rotary birthdays and women of the year. Right now, I want you to enjoy fellowship. We've had lots more people join us in the room, so please continue to finish lunch. And I'll be back up in a little while to introduce our incredible speaker today, Deborah. hope you guys discussion and lunch, but I want to bring Eric up here, Eric Temple, to introduce our speaker today. I just had my army of tech support come up and get the slides going, so we appear to be good to go. Deborah, how's everything? What's up? Here's my first. There's one of that.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see everybody here. Good crowd out today. As I was just speaking with Deborah about here at the table, I think being Inspector General for a city like Chicago is no easy task. So we really appreciate her spending the time to come out and chat with us today. Deborah Witzburg was appointed to her first term as Inspector General for the City of Chicago in April 2022 by Mayor Lightfoot. Previously, she served as the city's Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety, overseeing independent, objective evaluations and reviews of Chicago's police and police accountability agencies. She also served as the office's Chief Investigator for the Public Safety Section, leading efforts to screen and review closed police disciplinary cases, as well as the office's Associate General Counsel for Public Safety, advising on legal and constitutional matters. Ms. Witzburg first joined the office in 2016 as an Assistant Inspector General, providing legal and strategic counsel for investigations of misconduct by City of Chicago employees. Now, prior to that, she worked as an Assistant State Attorney in the Cook County State Attorney's Office, prosecuting a wide range of misdemeanor and felony cases, and serving in the State's Attorney's Community Justice Center, where she focused on the vertical prosecution of cases of greatest concern to Chicago's 11th and 12th police districts. There, she helped develop and institute crime prevention programs in partnership with schools, community groups, and neighborhood organizations. Ms. Witzburg holds leadership positions in the national oversight community, serving on the executive committee of the Association of Inspectors General Board of Directors, and as co-coordinator for the association's Certified Inspector General Investigator Training Institute. As we were chatting a little bit about, she earned a BA in anthropology from Brown University and came to Chicago to get her JD from Northwestern University School of Law. Please welcome Deborah Witzburg.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric, for that very nice introduction. Thank you all very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. The paying down the deficit of legitimacy is the title that you saw up here a few minutes ago, and that is how I think about the work that we do. I sort of operate from the premise that the city of Chicago operates at a deficit of legitimacy with its residents, which it has earned over the course of many decades, generations. And I view the role of the Office of Inspector General as paying down that deficit of legitimacy where and how we can. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the office. I know many of you are familiar with the office and the work we do, so I will be relatively brief, maybe uncharacteristically brief for a trial lawyer, but I'll talk a little bit about the office and kind of where we are, the present day state of affairs in the Office of Inspector General. And then I want to talk a little bit about the landscape on which we are currently doing our work, both here in the city and then nationally. And then if it's okay with everybody, I'm happy to take some questions if there's anything that's of particular interest to people. So a brief introduction here, because as I say, I know most of you are familiar with our office, but a quick review. So the Office of Inspector General is an independent, nonpartisan watchdog agency within city government, and it is the mission of the office to promote economy, effectiveness, efficiency, and integrity in the operation of city programs. Our jurisdiction is a broad one. We have a broad grant of authority under the city's municipal code, and that is we have legal authority over all city employees, officials, contractors, and subcontractors. That's, of course, a very big pool of people, contractors and subcontractors of the city, vendors, anybody who sells anything to the city, licensees of the city, including anybody holding a business license. So this is a very big jurisdictional umbrella. City employees, there are about 35,000 or so under our jurisdiction. City officials include not only all 50 members of city council, but the citywide elected officials as well, that is the mayor, the clerk, and the treasurer. And so we have plenty to do. Plenty to keep ourselves busy. The office is divided into a number of sections. We've done a bit of restructuring of the office during my time in the job, but we have a number of different practice areas kind of under one roof. And our office is unusual among municipal oversight agencies for its kind of breadth of practice. So we have under our roof these kind of sections, these practice areas. We have plenty of lawyers. It's like bring your favorite lawyer to work day every day at OIG. We have our investigation section, which is kind of the legacy work of the office, where we do both administrative and criminal misconduct investigations. Our public safety section is relatively new in the office. While we have always had jurisdiction over the police department, the public safety section came about as part of the kind of wave of police reform efforts in the city that followed the release of the Atomic Donald video. And so this was a specially constructed section in the office to focus resources and expertise on the police department and the police accountability agencies. Our audit and program review section does full-scale Yellow Book compliant government performance audits. And our information technology and analytics section does both the data science that underpins much of our investigative and our policy work, but also powers our information portal, which I'll talk a bit more about. So the work of our office, I think of our work in kind of three channels. We serve that mission of the office that we talked about in roughly three ways. The first of those is that we do confidential investigative work where we set out to investigate allegations that someone under that very big jurisdictional umbrella has done something wrong. Either they've broken a rule, violated a policy, ran afoul of some city rule, those are administrative investigations, or somebody has allegedly committed a crime. And those are criminal investigations where we work closely with the state attorney's office, my alma mater, or the U.S. attorney's office or the attorney general's office to bring those cases to prosecution. The second channel of our work is our public-facing program and policy work. And that's that work where we are looking at not whether rules are being broken, but whether things in the city, the programs and the operations of city government are as effective, efficient, and equitable as they ought to be. And then finally, the third channel of our work it is transparency initiatives. This is work that is animated by the principle that information about the government belongs to the governed. Any of those of you in the room who have ever seen the Freedom of Information Act request to the city of Chicago are familiar with the experience that there is a yawning gap between something being theoretically publicly available and meaningfully publicly accessible. And so the work that we do in this third channel is designed to kind of narrow that gap and to put good and clear information about city programs and operations into the hands of the people to whom it belongs, not accompanied in this case by any particular findings or recommendations or anything like that. The notion here is that we can have a more effective, more productive public policy conversation if everybody is kind of playing with a shared deck of good and clear and accurate information. And so a little bit about kind of the state of the office. And where I think we are in our efforts to pay down this deficit of legitimacy. So the office has been around in various iterations for many decades. It kind of took on its modern form in 1989 when Mayor Daley appointed the city's first Inspector General, Al Victoris. And the office has kind of iterated in a number of generations since 1989 with expansions of authority and jurisdiction and size and scope. So in fiscal year 2025, we have a budget of about $14.2 million and about 121 full-time employees. That is the largest the office has been. It is the least vacant the office has been. So we have more people. I'm happy to say we have more people right across the street doing the work than the office ever has before. And during my time in this job, we have built out certain sections of the office a little bit differently than they have before to kind of reflect strategic priorities. one of the biggest changes that we've undertaken during my time in the job is to change the way we do intake. And this is a little bit in the operational week, but I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Historically, and I think this really grew out of the fact that historically this office was an investigative body. That is the legacy work of the office. And so our intake function, how we would handle information that came to us, was an investigative function. Somebody would reach out to us with a piece of information. We would have a process within our investigation section where we would look at that information and say, like, okay, is this an allegation of misconduct? Is this a complaint against a city employee or official? And if yes, then maybe we investigate it. And if no, then that information sort of died on the cutting room floor. And we did not have a good mechanism to learn anything from what we were hearing from people if that piece of information was not susceptible to an administrative or a criminal misconduct investigation. So one of the first things we did when I came back into this job is that we took our intake function out of our investigation section and made it in its own unit, in a sort of centralized hub of the wheel position in the office. And the idea here is that by centralizing our intake function and making it, building connective tissue between our intake function and all of the kinds of work we do, not only investigations, but the program and policy work we do and transparency work we do as well. The idea here is that we can be better informed about what we ought to be prioritizing based on what real Chicagoans are worried about. And you know, when we and I tell you this, one, because like we are my favorite subject matter, but also because, you know, when we talk about pinning down the deficit of legitimacy, that's about getting at the things which most contribute to mistrust and distrust in government. It's been my experience doing this work that those things which make the Chicago way a proper noun, not in a good way, are not necessarily the problems associated with the biggest pile of dollars, right? Sometimes these are big money problems. Other times, though, the things that really shape how people feel about their government and that kind of where legitimacy of government lives or dies are much smaller piles of dollars. You know, I was really surprised. Well, there are things that surprise me about this work every day, but one of the first things that surprised me when I came to do this work is that we still have building inspectors soliciting $50 bribes. A $50 bribe, there's not a courtroom in Cook County where a $50 bribe is going to get prosecuted as a criminal offense. It just isn't. It's just not enough. This is a volume business, and it's just not enough. That's not a big enough crime to get prosecuted here, for better or for worse. But for the Chicagoan who's trying to make sure that their home is safe for their family to live in, and they have an electrical inspector who wants $50 to pass the inspection, it might as well be the Lindbergh kidnapping, right? Because there's a huge impact on that person's experience of the legitimacy of local government. And so I use that just as a sort of silly example, but the point here is that we use this centralized intake function to hear more, to listen better, about what people in Chicago are worried about, what they've seen go wrong, and what they need from their city government, so that we can prioritize the work we do in a way that's designed to pay down the deficit of legitimacy as best as we can. We are never, and all of these decisions are prioritization decisions. We are never going to do everything that needs to be. We are not going to fix what's wrong in city government in Chicago today. So everything has an opportunity cost. Every audit we launch, every investigation we undertake, it means that we don't do something else. And that's what makes it so critically important that we are making these prioritization decisions in a way that's well informed. And in order to make that work, sort of power that, we invest a lot in outreach and in awareness raising about who we are and what we do and where to find us. And I see that our screen is a little bit cut off, but at the bottom, you can see a picture of we have signs on the CTA on buses and trains in English and Spanish. That is one of the things that we've just started doing in the last couple of years. It just says, you know, your city, no one knows Chicago better than Chicago. It's very anxious to hear from people. It has our QR code and our contact information. So we have these signs in English and Spanish on buses and trains. We have billboards on roadsides in the city. We go out to as many, I often say we'll go anywhere we're invited, and some places we're not. To talk about our work and to listen to what people are worried about. It is generally our goal to reach every ward in the city every year. We don't quite get there, but close. And we come to rooms like this one where we talk to people about the work we're doing. And I think that is all, again, to kind of power this listening function that allows us to prioritize our work so we can focus on paying down the deficit. I think that this is working. We get between 8,000 and 10,000 intakes a year. And generally that number, that line goes up and to the right over time. And I do think that that is a good news story. I think that that number goes up not because more things are going wrong in the city, but because more people know who we are and where to find us. And maybe most importantly, more people are willing to believe that if something goes wrong in city government, there is someone who will listen. And I take that generally to be good news, to be a good sign. And then finally, we, in terms of kind of the state of the office, we do more aggressive investigative work than we used to, particularly around enforcement of the city's ethics rules, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But we have really prioritized investigative outcomes. There is a great deal to be said about unethical behavior in city government. There's very little to be said about it that does good at enforcing the rules. And so that brings us to kind of my strategic priorities in the office. We talked about paying down the legitimacy deficit, and we do that by focusing on aggressive, proactive enforcement of the city's ethics rules. Susceptible as this is to sort of a punchline, Chicago has an ethics ordinance which applies to city employees and officials and to people doing business with the city. Those rules have historically been categorically under-enforced. Historically, the Office of Inspector General was simply not really in the business of investigating violations of the ethics ordinance, and we are now, in a really aggressive way. Because that's what those rules, imperfect though they are sort of what stands between us and a government that no one's going to use best. And so we take those rules very seriously. We are deeply and sincerely devoted to transparency in government operations and decision making. One of the byproducts, or maybe the primary product of kind of where we are with this generation-long arc of mistrust and distrust in city government is that Chicago has not given anyone any reason to give City Hall the benefit of the doubt. And so when something goes wrong in city government, people have no reason to do anything but to assume the worst about what happens behind closed doors and in windowless rooms in City Hall. You know, I use that expression. I talk about windowless rooms in City Hall, and I mean that as a metaphor. Although we've done some work recently that had very literally to do with some windowless rooms in City Hall, which is a good reminder of sort of where we are. In any event, you all have heard the expression that sunlight is the best antiseptic, right? Ida B. Wells said, if you want to right wrong, shine the light of truth upon them. That's a lot of what we're doing here, is an effort to take the public policy conversations that happen in city government and kind of shove them into the light of day. And then finally, we will continue to be focused on public safety and police reform. Both of these issues, which are, of course, not alternatives to each other, but are necessary corollaries to each other. That is to say, keeping people safe and reforming the way we do it. These will continue to be areas of important focus for us, both because they are close to my heart, given kind of my journey to this job, but also because these issues are so close to the top of my many problems. I mentioned quickly sort of the landscape against which we do our work, which I think is just important to acknowledge. This is a time of tremendous challenge in city government. This is nothing, you all really these challenges as well. The city's $1 billion in red, and the decisions that are made up the street in the next couple of weeks will have tremendous impact on what city services look like in the city for the foreseeable future. To say that tensions with the federal government are running high is perhaps a tremendous understatement. Governing a city under those circumstances is an enormous challenge, and one which Chicagoans are entitled to, Chicagoans are entitled to some level of confidence that City Hall is up to the challenge. And then I think, we also are very kind of environmentally, viscerally aware of threats to independent government oversight across the country. Many of which don't impact us directly, but certainly change the tenor of our work, and I think, frankly, lower barriers to entry to undermine independent government oversight here in Chicago. We look out on the national landscape. Inspector General independence is not something that we are accustomed to seeing in national news stories. It's like an issue of very close to our hearts, but we're not accustomed to seeing in national news. And it very much has been in the national news in recent months with the removal of federal agency inspectors general, with the defunding of CIGI, which is the Council on Inspectors General for Integrity and Efficiency. This is kind of the umbrella organization for federal offices of Inspector General. It is a backbone of effective and independent government oversight. The erosion of whistleblower protections at the federal level. We all ought to be paying attention to these various ways in which independent and effective government oversight is being chipped away at the federal level. And we ought to be very wary of efforts that look similar right here at home. And so as we kind of look ahead to 2026 and beyond, and continuing critical work of the office to pay down this deficit of legitimacy, things that are on my mind include the importance of vigilance on issues of OIG independence. So in order to do our work, in order to conduct oversight, which is often unflattering to people in power at City Hall, we have to be able to do our work independently. Independence is the hallmark and the lifeblood of Inspector General work. And protecting that independence is not a one-time task. It's not an annual task. It requires everyday vigilance in everything about the way we do our work. That has to do with how we are funded. It has to do with how and who we hire. It has to do with how we select the work that we do. It has to do with whether and what information we share about our ongoing work. And so that is an everyday obligation for those of us doing that work. The other thing that I'm frankly really conscious of, given events on the national landscape, is how important it is for the people whose job it is to hold government actions accountable to be able to do so without fear or favor. That the people who do this work be able to do it without sort of the risk of intimidation. And so I think there are many painful cautionary tales on the national landscape that are at least kind of hovering above our work and the way we do it here in Chicago. So thank you for indulging our institutional life story here. That's kind of where I think we are. That's how I think about our work. I would be very happy to talk about whatever is of most interest to people. Like a support group. Yes. The real job is really fun. It's a good question. I appreciate that question very much. I will say, government law is the only kind of law I have ever practiced. And so some of this is like when you have a hammer, you're in the market for nails. Government law is the only kind of law that I know up close. I think we have extraordinary people working for us, including, but not limited to, our lawyers. People come to this work from a huge range of backgrounds. One of the things I'm really proud of that we've done over the last couple of years is how much we have broadened that range of experience from which we draw people, including our lawyers. And so that includes people who've been real lawyers at big firms, and people who have been prosecutors at state and local and federal levels, people who have regulatory experience, people who have been lawyers elsewhere in the city. We have people who come from a huge range of academic disciplines. We have data scientists with STEM backgrounds. We have people who survived education in humanities like I did. We have a huge range of people. I think that, the people who, being happy and successful in this work, I think requires two things. I think the people who are happiest and most successful doing our work are the people for whom the mission of the work is the primary motivator. This is mission work. There are lots of good and fine logistical and quality of life things about working for the city, but nobody goes into government for the glamour or the flexibility of it. Although somebody can do that sooner. This is mission work. And so people who are happy and successful in this work are people for whom industry is the primary motivator. The second thing is, I think, and you all have seen this in other kinds of work, being happy and successful in the work requires an ongoing ability to keep an eye on the connection between the tasks that are on our desks every day and that mission. And that connection is sometimes more obvious than others, right? I find myself sitting at my desk sometimes, line editing a summary of a, performance audit of recycling. And I think like, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves and each other of the connection between tasks on our desk and the larger mission. And so that's what I think it takes. And we are fortunate to have 121 extraordinarily talented people doing it every day. Yeah, I appreciate that question. People doing business in the city are certainly among those who see its challenges up closest, right? You all have had to navigate corridors of city government, which we have never seen for ourselves. And so you all have perspective which inform our work tremendously. And look, if we're going to do it, if this is going to happen, if the city is going to keep moving forward, it is going to be with the continued investment of people who believe in the city. The work we are doing boils down to building a city government we can, with a straight face, ask people to trust in a stable enough way that it makes sense to invest in the city. And so, when we say that we want to hear from people who are worried about being in city government, we want to hear from you. We're easy to find. Please let us know what you think and what you're worried about. Yes. Well, this is my favorite question today. Our work is only as impactful as we are effective in talking about it. So, we can't do transparency work in secret. And if like the accountability tree falls in the forest when nobody's there to watch it, right? It doesn't have any impact, returns or otherwise. And so the most supportive thing that people can do is to engage with our work. Our work only leads and breathes and has an impact in the hands of stakeholders in the city and the people who hold decision makers to political account. And so it is, for all of the reasons that I so appreciate your time today, I so appreciate your kind of staying aware of and engaging with our work. You're absolutely right. I think as an industry, as a practice, we have done an especially poor job of kind of making the case about why our work matters to people, or why it should matter. And that is one of the missions I have set out on here, is to make exactly that case. One of the reasons I am so conscious of the kind of looming challenges in the city is that it's hard to imagine a time when it would matter more than now that people have a local government in which they have reason to be confident, against the backdrop of sort of chaos on the national level, and at best destabilized financial outlook for the city. It's hard to imagine there being a time more critical than now that people have confidence in city government, which is not to say things go wrong. Even in good and competent government, things go wrong. What we need is a system that we can ask people to believe in to handle what goes on. And so kind of engagement with and awareness of our work is the thing that makes it three-dimensional, makes it have any impact. So that is what I would ask all of you to do, and I really appreciate that.
I'm sorry, but
I'll be great. Okay. All right.
Chicago, Washington,
I will be here, but I will speak to both of those things. Well, yeah, that may be a conversation. So thank you for both the comment and the question. I'll say with respect to your comment, I totally agree that for as long as a $50 bribe is small potatoes, we're not going to make very much progress. And that's exactly why I mentioned that, because we are in fact going after those cases that really matter in a big way in terms of legitimacy, even if they're not going to get charged as crimes. Because they don't reach the dollar threshold as you mentioned, such that in the U.S. office. And we're doing that in lots of different ways, including what we thought for the first time in history in this city. We have enforced the city's ethics rules, not only against city officials who are taking bribes, but against members of the public who are offering bribes, which the law allows, but has never in history in the city been done before. So, agree. With respect to policing and police misconduct settlements, I'll say a couple of things. This is everybody who is worried both about public safety reform and about the city's bottom line ought to have an eye on this question. This is a very big money question. This number is a couple of years old at this point, but between the beginning of 2017 and end of 2020, the city paid out $250 million in public police department related settlements and judgments. As you all know, an awful lot of good could be done in the city and in that department for $250 million. And you're right. Sometimes settlements are a question of managing the risk, and many of the lawyers in the room have made decisions like that. But I will say two things. One, we have studied, we've written a fair amount about this. The city is not well equipped to learn lessons from those very large checks that are going out the door. There are not good mechanisms in place for risk management or risk mitigation based on the kinds of incidents which lead to those settlements and judgments. From a business perspective, right, as a business proposition, you can imagine the kind of data analysis that we would all want to do in your operations, right? Are there clusters of misconduct by neighborhood or police district, or are more things going wrong on certain walks or under certain supervisors? Are these Fourth Amendment cases? Are these excessive force cases? You can imagine the kind of questions you would want to ask so that you could institute risk management strategies. The city doesn't collect enough or high enough quality data to do it and hasn't invested the resources to do it. And that's one. The second thing I would say about misconduct related settlements is that there is a real sort of breakdown in the information pipeline between the city's operations around misconduct settlements and misconduct investigations. I am hard pressed to imagine a situation where the city should be making a decision about whether we are going to pay a settlement unless and until the city has actually conducted a misconduct investigation to determine whether somebody broke the rules. And if the rules got broken and the appropriate way to manage the associated risk is to pay a settlement, we should do so. If no rules got broken and it was a bad outcome because sometimes the law enforcement has ugly outcomes, then we should take the fight.
Well done.
Thank you.
Can we have a small token, Deborah? Oh, wow, she is good. I think it's so. Could have been here for hours, I know. Thank you so much. That was incredibly enlightening and amazing. I'm trying to get back to my tech support has to come up and help me get back to my screen. So we do have some visiting Rotarians, I believe, in the room. If you could stand and introduce yourself and your guest, that would be good. That's okay. We have some guests in the room. You know, I know we have some guests who'd like to introduce. Thank you. Guests in the room? Yes, please introduce yourself. Fantastic. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you for visiting. Guys, like my camp visitors, just a reminder that please look for your newsletter, your diary. We do have several meetings coming up on the schedule all the way through to Woman of the Year in June and Katie's installation next year in July. And we also talking about mission today. We all are part of that. We understand that kind of effort, and we seek to make sure that Rotarians are continuing to engage. The nominating committee is working. Sarah is the chair of that, and she will be seeking, we all will be seeking people to step up for the board, for roles on the board, for we need one more person on that nominating committee as she brings that forward. We enjoyed some fellowship recently, trying some new things, and we did the yacht club and had a wonderful induction of our newest member, Angie, and just a reminder that we have many committees that are always seeking input and assistance. Membership committee, community service, international service. And going forward, we're going to have some meetings where we talk a little bit more about ourselves and what kind of work we've done and continue to support through our foundation. So we will be getting that on the agenda at upcoming meetings. Every Friday, a group meets here in Carverly at noon, and usually shares that. So for a casual discussion. And again, we're reminded that we do have a fundraiser for our Job One program, and we'll be incorporating that in the foundation work going forward, the pledges going forward on that. We have a couple of birthdays, neither one are in the room, so not seen. Richard just guaranteed me that he didn't stay away the last few weeks because he's staying with him, so I'm feeling good about that. We will be talking a lot more, as I said, about the work of our club, the Rotary Foundation. I look forward to seeing everybody next week when we have our fellowship meeting at Remington. If you have not joined us there, it's a great location. We really enjoy being together in the room, and we look forward to having everyone there. So right now, if everyone would please stand and join me in our four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. This probably really relates to Deborah's work. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And the last one, will it be fun? Thank you again, Deborah, Eric, thank you so much.